faith versus truth.
Yep.
Because you talk about faith being based on an experience, and so you have an experience and then the truth enters you.
Yeah, but it has to be a truthful experience. It can't be an error-based experience. See, this is the thing where many of you started to get confused yesterday. You were thinking I was talking about one thing when I was talking about something completely different. And this is what we want to clarify today. So if we continue to clarify what we spoke of yesterday in this manner, I'm sure it will become clear to you how experience affects your faith.
But can I carry on?
Far right.
It seems like you need to take a leap of faith in order to get the experience to
You
get
do.
the faith.
That's the point of faith.
Well, this is why I don't understand.
But you take a leap of faith in the truth that you know at this point in time.
This is how I feel about it, is that in order to grow faith, I have to experiment. So in that moment, on this issue, there's not faith in me about this. I'm experimenting with it. That allows me to have an experience which grows my faith. But this second point that we're talking about is that some of us have had experiences which have grown our faith in certain truths, but then we don't want to act in harmony with them, and so our faith can never grow. Does that make sense?
Sorry. What's the problem? Tell me the emotional problem.
You feel faithless.
Oh, I've got complete confusion.
Okay, now what's your primary problem that we've always discussed with you? Whenever you go into confusion, what do?
My brain stops working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why does this happen?
Because of the spirits.
You've got a clever... Luli, by the way, is a brain scientist, basically, and her brain stops working when she gets confused. Right.
She's not used to being confused.
So why does this happen? You're not used to being confused.
Yeah.
But what happens when you get confused? What emotionally happens?
Oh, I start to panic.
Yes. So what's starting to happen now is fear starts coming up in you. What does fear do?
Well, that's what shuts down my brain, right?
Fear shuts down everything. It shuts down your ears, your eyes, everything. It shuts down everything. It's a terrible, terrible response. And the reason why is because it has certain psychological effects on us as well, fear. And so what happens is we hear something, and then as the confusion grows, which is the real emotion that you feel, the confusion grows. Instead of just sitting with what being presented with and pondering about it, you want to understand it right now. Why do you have to understand it right now? What happened in your childhood? Yeah. So you have to understand it right now. Because right now means that now you're clever, now you're good, now you're daddy's girl again, right? Right? All these right now things. You don't have to understand it right now. What we're presenting here, God's okay with you not understanding it for the next 10 years. But you're not. That's the problem, right? But go on. That's the emotional problem. Do we still want to work with the fear, or what do we want to do?
Well, I sat in confusion all day yesterday,
Yes.
and then I was following Mary's advice of voicing it today.
Awesome.
Ask a question.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. But
So
understand where your confusion is coming from.
Yeah.
It's not coming from anything we're presenting. It's coming from this feeling that happens inside of you that when you get into confusion, your fear is triggered. As soon as your fear is triggered, now it's very hard to hear anything. It's very hard to understand in that place. So what I'm suggesting is maybe watch this video over and let yourself have the fear, let yourself feel the fear, let that go. And then when you let it go, you'll go, oh, that's what they were saying, and you won't need to have it reasoned upon over and over again before you get it. And it's actually better that it happens that way because you get rid of some fear in the process. Fear that is influencing all of your ability to understand. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
Could I just talk about this one thing, though, that I think Luli is getting at? Yesterday we talked about faith, or you talked about faith, growing through having an experience, didn't you?
Yeah, but it has to be an experience based on truth.
And the question, I think, does anyone else have the question, what do you do when you haven't had the first experience? Yeah. So everyone has, or a lot of you have that question.
Yeah.
And that's where I believe we experiment based on some intellectual faith.
Yep. Do you understand the difference between an intellectual faith, which is really just a concept or an idea based on logic? Right? Now, most of you have some logic, or maybe not. Is that an assumption? Logic is possible when we reason about things, right? This is like God gave us a brain. Use it. Like most religions say, no, faith is not about using your brain. I can't agree, right? They say faith is all about there's this thing, it doesn't have to make sense. I can't agree with that either. It has to make complete sense, right? If you're going to have any faith at all, it has to begin with something making complete sense, right? So what I'm suggesting to you is forget about this faith in all these abstract concepts and ideas that, they're just great ideas or whatever, and focus on what does make complete sense. And that was what I would call an intellectual concept or an idea, or should we put in quotations, an intellectual faith, an intellectual concept or idea that this might be, because we don't know for certain, but this might be the absolute truth. Right? Now, the reason why many of you keep coming along to my presentations, even though that it's not in your heart yet, is because you believe in your intellect that it might be the truth.
But why hasn't the faith grown, the heart faith grown? What's the missing ingredient? The experiment. Exactly.
Well, I feel there's two missing ingredients,
Okay.
actually. The first one is the willingness to make the experiment, right? And we'll talk more about the experiment in a minute when we make our final list about faith, right? But another reason is that the experiment would give us love. And love is what grows real faith. Love results in real, solid faith growing. Does that make sense? And this is why in the Message of Solomon that was written in 1916, I should mention, pointed out, it's the 20th of April 1916 on the Paget Messages. He said, the love will come and with it, faith. Right? True faith. So true faith is a heart-based operation, not a head-based operation, but it has to be based on logic. It can't be based on just a concept or an idea that's wishful thinking. It has to have actually happened, not something that just we imagined happened. Right? Many people say, we ask many people, have you received divine love? They say, oh yeah, I think I have. What? If you think you have, you haven't. Probably, if that's what you're saying. You will know when you have, and you'll know. You'll know that you've received some divine love. Now, some people say to us, oh yeah, I think I have, and it felt really wonderful, and I felt really happy for days and days, and it was really great, and I was having everybody was giving me exactly what I wanted, and I go, yeah. That sounds to me like a spirit giving you some addictions, not God giving you some love, because God confronts all of your addictions. Right?
In fact, in this process, trying an experiment and asking for and receiving love, that brings up a lot of emotion, even just the first step, doesn't it? We just talked about how most of us don't do it because we want to hold on to these ideas about love.
Most of you don't experiment for reasons. You're afraid that you're wrong. You're afraid of all sorts of things. Afraid that God's not going to give you it, and that means that there's something wrong with you, right? And all these things. Yeah?
And do you know why I feel lots of us get distressed when we start talking about this faith issue? Similar to Lulu, like, hang on, I get it. What happens if I don't have it yet? Is because we are uncomfortable with that feeling of like, hang on, to get faith, I'm going to have to do something that might feel a little bit scary.
Might have to take risks.
And often I know from personal experience, every time the topic of faith would come up, I'd go into meltdown because I'd be like, well, what is it? And how do I get it? And anything but the truth, which I already knew, that I just needed to do these two things.
That's all.
Yeah.